On the phone, we have a legendary broadcaster, former Kansas City Athletic, Senator, Red Sox, Indians. He's done it all. He's basically jack of all trades. Ken Harrelson. How you doing, Mr. Harrelson?
So far, so good, David.
How did you end up getting involved in baseball with the Kansas City A's?
Well, I grew up in Savannah, Georgia, and I played all the sports. And baseball actually was my worst sport. And I had a mom who I adored. I was a mama's boy, still am, even though she's gone. I'll always be a mama's boy. But she was a single parent. She was making $56 a week. And she raised me. And she wanted me to play baseball. I made All-American in basketball. Should have made All-American football. Could have gone anywhere I wanted to go in, in football or basketball. Notre Dame, Southern Cal, anywhere. But my mom wanted me to play baseball, and I got a big bonus to sign from Kansas City. So when I got the bonus, I signed with them to play baseball.
Now, didn't the Dodgers also make you an offer?
The Dodgers offered me twice as much as we signed for. And but they had, at the time, they had a ton of farm teams. They had, 13 farm teams, 23, something like that. They had 3 AAA teams. And they had some legendary players in those, became legendary players in those teams. So the guy who signed me, Clyde Putz, was also the guy who signed Catfish Hunter and Dick Hauser. Almost everybody he signed got to the big leagues. And Kansas City only had 5 farm teams. And he said, he told my mom into signing with him because he said, your son signs with Kansas City. By the time he gets 20 years old, he'll probably be in the big leagues. And he was right. So it was a good choice by my mom. It was hard to turn down that kind of money, especially when you're making $56 a week. But she saw it. She was looking down the road.
So the college teams weren't offering you as much money as the minor league teams?
Well, actually, I signed to go to the University of Georgia. I got very few baseball scholarship offers. There were all for football and basketball, 90% of them. But I signed to go to the University of Georgia, and one of the alumni there was going to give me a new wardrobe. A new wardrobe every year, a 2-year-old car to drive every year, and pay me, I think it was $40 a week. So that was voided when I signed. Back in those days, you couldn't be a professional athlete and accept a scholarship to go to college.
So it was a fairly simple decision to make then?
Well, it was none of those decisions back in those days because we didn't have agents, and my mom, as I said, was a very smart lady. She had a lot of common sense, not much book learning, but I thought she was brilliant, in the common sense area. And she got me in good habits, like reading and everything. I didn't do all my homework. I went to a military school. I actually got paid to go to a military school there. They paid for my books and tuition, which was very expensive. And they had 3 high schools there in Savannah, and they were all trying to get me to go there. So this one alumni paid me to go out for 2 hours on a Saturday and paint aluminum gas tanks, butane gas tanks. And then when I, go out during baseball, when I'd hit home runs or driving runs, some of the guys would come by after the game, put a $5 bill in my hand, and then I'd score 20 or 30 points in a basketball game. They'd come up, put a $5 or $10 bill in my hand, So I was actually making more than my mom going to high school.
When you joined the A's in '63, did you realize that you had so many great minds on that team that would become future managers? I mean, you had Dick Hauser, Tony La Russa there. I mean, 2 Hall of Fame quality managers.
As a matter of fact, yes, is the answer to that. Yes, we knew that we had something special going there. We knew that was going to be a great ball club. And they moved in 1968. They moved that team out to Oakland, and they went on to win, 5 consecutive divisional titles and 3 consecutive world championships. So we knew that was going to be a great ball club. And Tony, Tony was the guy. They signed him for a big bonus. Tony didn't play a lick. couldn't hit, not a real good fielder, but we all respected Tony because when he first came up to us, I think he was 18 years old. He was a man, and he carried himself very eloquently, especially for anybody, but especially for an 18-year-old kid. And he drew a lot of our respect in that sense. And then we had some other guys there. You know, Dick Hauser was a very, very sharp guy. I called him Slick. And we knew he had some good baseball minds on that club and in that organization at the time. So it didn't surprise me, the evolution, so to speak, of those guys playing their careers out, going into coaching, going into managing. And then Tony, for example, you know, Tony might turn out to be certainly one of, if not the greatest manager we've ever had in baseball.
Speaking of Dick Hauser, you were teammates with him in the minors, and he is the man who gave you your nickname? Yeah,
he gave me my nickname, Hawk. I was struggling, you know. I signed when I was 17, and I, you know, went in, and even though I was a local yokel there in Savannah, when you get into professional baseball, that scenario changes in a hurry. And I was having trouble, like everybody does, you know, with a good curveball. I couldn't hit it, which I couldn't hit it all my 9 years in the big leagues either. I could hit a hanger, but I couldn't hit a good one. Nobody can. But we were in the shower one day, and I'd struck out 3 or 4 times, and there was a comic strip in the papers back in those days called Henrietta Hawk. And with my nose and everything, he was calling me Henrietta. And I was pissed off, and I told him in the shower one day, I said, Dick, I've had enough of this shit. I don't want to hear it anymore. He said, well, maybe if you get a couple of hits, I'll drop the Henrietta. But don't you know, the very next day I hit a home run, and he dropped the Henrietta, and has been Hawk ever since.
Another one of your teammates on those teams was Charlie Law, who became a great hitting coach. Did he ever give you any tips?
Oh, well, Charlie, yeah, he was the third string catcher when I joined Kansas City. Back in those days, they carried, you know, 3 catchers because they only had a 9 or 10 man pitching staff. Today they got 12 and 13 man pitching staff, so you can't carry 3 catchers. But Charlie was another guy of that ilk that you brought up about having a good baseball mind, and he had an engaging personality. He had a personality a demeanor that you gravitated to him. And I would be playing in a game, and let's say David Spada was pitching, and he would say, "Oh, David, this guy here is going to just slaughter you to death." And so he'd give me at least a platform, some thought process of going up there thinking about something other than mechanics. Mechanics are killer in baseball and in golf if you're thinking about them when you're hitting or when you're on the golf course. You can't score when you're on the golf course. You can't hit in a game if you're thinking about mechanics. And Charlie was a very, very unique guy. He, let me turn this radar thing. I don't use it speed because I don't drive fast. I use the fact to keep me from speeding. But he became a hitting coach, and Charlie was a unique guy because he wouldn't go seek you out. He would watch you, and then all of a sudden you'd start having problems, and finally you would go to him. Now, when that happened, you would buy into whatever he was telling you. And Charlie didn't handle 100% of the guys right. Nobody can. Nobody's that smart in baseball. When you've got, 14, 15 guys, hell, if they're that smart, they'd own the club. But he helped a lot of guys, and he probably will go down as maybe the greatest hitting coach in the history of the game because I've seen a lot of in my career. And Charlie was right at the top. There's no question about that. We disagreed all the time, because we played a lot of cards together. Charlie used to make almost as much money beating us in hearts as he did on the playing lines as he did making salary. But he'll probably go down as maybe one of the greatest, if not the greatest hitting coach.
And your manager, Alvin Dark, you got upset when he was fired. Why was that?
Well, because he taught us how to play the game. You know, he taught us how to read a scoreboard. Anybody who knows how to read a scoreboard doesn't need any help. You don't have to go ask any questions. It'll tell you as an infielder when you can't miss high with a throw, you miss, you got to miss low. It'll tell you as an outfielder when you can overthrow a cutoff guy, when you can't. It'll tell a pitcher when he's got to throw a strike, when he doesn't need to. It'll tell a hitter when he can be offensive rather than defensive. It'll tell you when you can't make the first or the last out at third base, and that's every game. But it'll just tell you everything that you got to know. And he taught us how to read the scoreboard. That Oakland team that went out there, that Kansas City team that went out there, is the smartest playing team I've ever seen in my 55 years in this game. They didn't go to the ballpark every day saying, well, let's go kick some ass. You know, they go to the ballpark every day with that quiet confidence of we're not going to beat ourselves. We're not going to make mental mistakes. They didn't overthrow cutoff guys. They had different swings on 2-0 when it was versus when it was 0-2. And Alvin just taught us how to play. We knew we were going to be a hell of a ball club. And then when Philly fired him, I got pissed off. And I ripped him apart in the press. And that was in 1967. And there happened to be 4 teams in what a lot of people call the greatest pennant race in history, within one game of each other. That was the White Sox, the Red Sox, the Tigers, and the Twins. And at the particular time that he released me, the only guy who was swinging it back in the league better than I was Yastrzemski, who won the Triple Crown that year. So here I was, and I was making $12,000. And he called me up the next day, and we got into an argument, and he released me. There's a long process that I'm not going to go into about that. And then all of a sudden, these other teams started calling. And the first team to call were the Chicago White Sox. And they had a general manager there that, this is the way the conversation started. He said, I forget his name, Ed Short or something. He said, it's Ed Short with the White Sox. He said, I got Eddie Stanky here with me. He says, we understand you and Charlie had an argument. We want you to come over here and play for the White Sox. And we didn't have agents. I didn't have an agent. There were no agents in baseball. So I'm sitting there listening to him on the phone. And he says, but I got to tell you one thing. He said, I'm not going to get into a bidding war. And I'm going to make you one offer, and you take it right now, or I'm not going to call you back. So that struck me. You know, I'm not a smart guy, but it struck me when he said bidding war. One offer, this is it, take it or leave it. So he said, we're going to give you $100,000 to come play with the White Sox. And I was making $12,000, you know, 2 days before. So I said, I don't think that's fair. I thought about it. You know, I don't think that's fair. I said, I don't think it's fair. I'm not going to take it. So he said, okay, I'm not going to call you back. And then he put Stanky on the phone. He tried to talk me into coming over. So he hung up the phone. As soon as I hung it up, it wasn't 1 minute later that it rang again. And it was Haywood Sullivan of the Boston Red Sox. And he said, Hawk, he said, I understand you and Charlie had an argument. I said, yeah. He said, well, we want you to come up here and play in Boston. Because I had played with Sully and for him in Kansas City. He was a player, third-string catcher, and also the manager at one point. So he said, I'm going to fly into Baltimore tonight. He says, we'll talk. I said, okay. So now the phone rang all day long. I mean, almost every team in the big leagues called. They had Tokyo Giants call, and they offered me triple what my best offer would be if I would sign a 3-year contract to come over there and play. And I just kept getting these offers, you know, people calling up. And a lot of them said, what have you been offered, blah, 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 blah. And I said $100,000 by the White Sox, which I had been, you know. So I was going to the airport to meet Sullivan that night in Baltimore, and I had to stop by the ballpark and pick up my gear. I had to pick up my spikes and my gloves and stuff. So Luke Appling had been hired as the interim manager. And I love Luke. Luke and I were good buddies. He and Gabby Hartnett, Jimmy Dykes, they were coaches on our team. And I had grown to love those guys because I loved to talk baseball with them. So what happened was Luke called me into his office. I went in there and he says, look, Charlie's he said he made a mistake. He said he's sorry, blah, 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 blah. He said, if you'll come back, he'll raise your salary to $25,000. I said, Luke, I've already been offered $100,000. He said, what? I said, I've already been offered $100,000. He said, also, he said, if I can get you to come back, you'll make me manager for next year. And I said, Luke, I can't do it. I said, I can't do that. He said, I know you can. He said, go get your stuff and get your ass out of here. So I went to the airport. I met Sullivan. We talked, and he offered me $118,000. And I loved Fenway. I just had a big series there, a couple of weeks, maybe, 10 days, 2 weeks prior to that, where I beat him 2 of the 3 games. I had a 3-run homer off Lonborg to win the first game, and I hit a 2-run double off John Wyatt to win the third game. So I was fresh in their mind, and they had just lost Tony Conigliaro. So everything, the stars were all in line. I mean, it was incredible. It was an incredible story about the sequence of events that happened. And, I mean, this shit went on now. It didn't stop there. It went on. I finally was offered $250,000 to sign with the Atlanta Braves. And I'm not going to go into it because I'm at the ballpark now. I'm not going to go into the details of that. It was just an unbelievable sequence of events. And at that time, that was the biggest raise in baseball history. I finally signed with the Red Sox for $150,000. And at that time, that was by far the biggest raise in the history of baseball. So I'm parking right here. That was how I got to go to Boston, and then and then the next year I almost won the Triple Crown. So it was it's been a fun ride. I can tell you that right now.
I mean, that Boston team was loaded there in the late '60s. You had Yastrzemski, yourself, Conigliaro. I mean, there was just so much talent on that team.
Well, we went to the World Series and we got beaten 7 games by 3 of them by Bob Gibson, who we outside of Gibby, we had a better team than the Cardinals, but they had Gibson, and he just stuck it up our ass for 3 games. I mean, it was a great thrill for me because prior to that I had been in Kansas City, where we had a young ball club, but we lost a lot of ball games. And then all of a sudden go to a pennant contender. I think in Kansas City we had 1 beat writer that traveled with us, And all of a sudden I get to Boston now, and there's 30 or 40 writers every day in the clubhouse. You can't hardly move because that Boston clubhouse is like a big closet. And plus, the excitement of it, and then also the intrigue for me, hitting behind Yastrzemski. When he won the Triple Crown. He won the Triple Crown in the midst of what they call the greatest pennant race in history. So, I mean, that's something. And just to watch that guy and what he did, and when he did it, it's not what he did, it was when he did it, was incredible. I learned more hitting behind him than I did from any hitting coach that I ever had.
He didn't leave many runners on base to knock in, though, did he?
No, thank goodness, because I didn't have it. I had it. The hitting part, it was just starting. It was in this embryonic stage. I had just started to figure it out a little bit. As I said, I was swinging the bat great. And then my first time, I joined them in New York, and my first time up, I hit a home run because it was a big loss for them to lose Conigliaro, and they needed another bat in there. And so when they were down a little bit because of the fact of the loss of Tony. And then my first at bat, I hit a home run over the scoreboard in right center field in Yankee Stadium, and that sort of picked everybody up. And actually, I didn't do that much down the pennant race. I won a couple of games for them. I won, I think, 3 games. I drove in 5 runs against the White Sox in a big game, and then won a couple of other games. I just got caught up in watching Yaz. Everybody did. We just jumped on his back, and he just carried us, that little 178-pound asshole. And I say that lovingly.
Was Bob Gibson the most intimidating pitcher you ever faced?
No. Bob Gibson was a great pitcher. Nobody could stand him. I couldn't stand him. Nobody could. And I never met him. I mean, just the stories you heard about him. Baseball is a unique game. That's where little guys are not afraid of big guys. And baseball, they come in all sizes and shapes. And what the hell, if he hits you, he hits you. It's no big deal. So it hurts for a little bit. But our mindset was a little bit different back in, and the culture of the game was different back in those days. Intimidation? No. Ability-wise? Yeah. He could intimidate you with his ability, but not with his toughness or anything else, because everybody else that went up there, most guys were as tough as. Everybody has some fear in baseball. You got to learn how to compensate for it. And the way I compensated for it was, did I have fear of the ball? I had some fear, sure, but I was not afraid of who was throwing it. And that was how I compensated for it. And a lot of guys felt the same way. So Gibby would just beat us. He was fantastic. In fact, in the last 7th game of the World Series, my last at bat, I hit a ground ball, and he went over to back up first. And as I was passing by him, I looked at him and I said, "Gibby, you're the greatest." And I don't read sports books, but somebody told me he put that in his book. And what had happened was my second at bat, about the 5th inning, he struck me. He first pitch he threw me was a sinker, and Gibby didn't throw sinkers. So I backed out of the box. I get back in. Here comes another sinker. I didn't know what was going on. Then he struck me out on a slider or something, and I'm going back to the dugout, and Rico was coming up, Petrocelli, and I said, "Rico," I said, "he's lost his fucking fastball." He said, "What?" I said, "He's lost his fastball." Sure enough, he had pitched 300-something innings that year. And this was the 3rd game, in the series, and he just ran out of gas. And he stood out there. It didn't bother him one bit. A lot of guys, you'd have to take them to intensive care. They'd been so scared. But it didn't bother Gibby. And he stuck it up our ass for the last 5 innings with a sinker. And that's why I said it's Gibby the greatest, because it never faced him one bit once he lost his fastball.
Who was the best pitcher you went up against?
Well, you got to categorize them. Right-handed starter, right-handed reliever, left-handed starter, left-handed reliever. The best stuff I've ever seen to this day was Sam McDowell. He had the greatest stuff I've ever seen. If I had to have one pitcher win a game for my family's life, it would have been Catfish Hunter. He didn't have shit. He threw about 87, 88, maybe 90 every now and then, but he could throw it to a teacup, and he had big balls out there, and he knew how to pitch. Gibby was a great one. Drysdale, Mel Stottlemyre for the Yankees was a great pitcher. There's so many of them that Jim Palmer, 8-time 20-game winner, I think 3-time Cy Young Award winner. There's so many great pitchers that you face. I love to face those guys. And I did okay against those guys. The guys that stuck it up my ass were the shitballers. The guys with good change-ups, didn't throw hard, had mediocre stuff. Because there's an adrenaline level that at least for me, I had to try to get to. And I guess it was easy to get up when you went to the ballpark if you were going to face Sam McDowell, who I couldn't hit that well anyway with him. Nobody did, except Frank Howard. But there's still much that goes into baseball. That's why baseball, to me, is the most beautiful game, because it's the most cerebral game. Baseball will give you the opportunity to beat yourself so many ways. And it gives you so many opportunities. The greatest hitters in the world fail 7 out of 10 times. So you have to have a mental posture. You have to have a mindset that you develop through failure, not through success. You develop it through failure, and the more you fail, if you have the balls to go ahead and hang with it and try to improve, then the next season you won't fail as much. You won't strike out as much. You'll get more hits, and it's one of those things. That's why I love baseball.
How did you end up going to Cleveland?
I got traded.
Did you want to go there, or you wanted to stay in Boston the rest of your career?
No, I had a great year in '68. As I said, almost won the Triple Crown, led the big leagues in RBIs, and then Cleveland, Alvin Dark was managing them, and we had obviously had a good relationship. So they needed some hitting, and the Red Sox needed a right-handed starter, a right-handed reliever, and a catcher. So I wake up on a Saturday morning, and I'm reading the paper, And I see this article written by a guy named Larry Klassen, who said the Indians and the Red Sox are going to make a deal. The Indians need hitting, and the Red Sox need pitching and a catcher. So my name was involved. They said the Red Sox are going to trade Ken Harrelson, George Scott, Yastrzemski to hold it. To Cleveland for pitching. So I called Dick O'Connell, the general manager, up, and I said, Dick, I said, what is this? He goes, Hawk. He said, I read it. He said, your name has not even come up. Don't even worry about it. It's a big old ballpark that day. And Louis Camp was pitching for Cleveland. And Louis had just had a great year the year before, set the all-time American League record, which still stands for ERA for a season of 1.60. So the first time up, I hit a home run. Now, the last time up, Louis still out there, and I hit another home run. And I'll never forget, I was going on first base. And I said, well, that'll put an end to all that shit. So I go home after the game, and I had a house guy there, Wendell. He was an older guy, about 75, and he took care of me. He cooked for me and everything. So all of a sudden the phone rings. So Wendell picks it up and he hands it to me. And it was Alvin Dark. And he says, Kenneth? He says, that's what he called me. He said, Kenneth, come on over and put the red hat on. I said, what? He said, just traded for you. I said, you what? He said, I'm getting tired of seeing you hit home runs against us. I just traded for you. So I thought for a minute. I said, Alvin, I love you, you know that. But I said, that's bullshit. I said, I'm not coming. He said, yeah, you will. He says, you'll come for me. I said, no, I'm not. I'm not coming. And they had traded Sonny Siebert, Joe Askew, the catcher, and Vincente Momo. All three of those guys that made the All-Star team in the last 2 years. It was a hell of a deal for Boston. And so I held out. Finally, Billy Kuhn called a meeting in New York with the general managers and myself. And by this time, I had Bob Wolf as an agent. And we went over there. And because none of those guys could play, that was the rule at the time.
You were mentioning about Cleveland, but the good thing about joining Cleveland was you weren't going to have to face Sam McDowell anymore.
Well, there's two good things about it. You don't get to face Sam, have to face Sam anymore, and you don't have to make any road trips there.
Yeah, but you were there for half of your games.
No. But no, what I did was unprecedented in the history of baseball when I held out like that. There were 7 players involved in the deal, and none of the other 6 could play until either they rescinded the deal or I reported. So after all I went through this, and finally agreed to terms in New York, the commissioner's office, they changed the rule. They call it the Harrelson Rule. It used to be it was up to the team that traded you to get you to where they traded you to. So after I held out like that, they changed it to whereas it's up to the team who traded for you to get you there. That way the players wouldn't be held up. The other players wouldn't be held up. And the only way, they're going to get you there if you didn't want to go was what? With more money. So it turned out to be a huge factor in the salary structure of baseball. Jimmy Cannon was a very famous and a great sports writer in New York. And after we did that, Jimmy, there must have been, 150 media people there at the commissioner's office. waiting to see what was going to happen. And then when we announced that we made the deal, Jimmy Cannon comes walking up to me. He was a little guy. He had a big cigar. He said, "That's what you did today." I said, "What are you talking about, Jimmy?" He said, "You just broke down the salary structure of baseball." And he went on, and finally he wrote a column the next day, just blistered my ass. I mean, he really did. But Jimmy was a great writer. And when you did something good, he praised you. When you screwed up, then he would burn your ass. And he thought because I destroyed the structure of baseball, which, you know, it had never been done, that a player traded, held out, and then got a raise on his current contracts. That had never happened in the baseball system. So I went to Cleveland. I've never been to a place I didn't have a good time in. So I had a good ballpark. It was the biggest ballpark in the major leagues. You had to kill it to get it out of it. When I joined them, Alvin Dark says, "Look, we got some great pictures." He said, "David, the culture of baseball was different. Managers told you what they wanted you to do. If you were a run-and butt type guy, he would tell you, I want you to get 15 or 20 butts this year because that's 30 or 40 points. And you're going to score more runs. If you're a home run hitter, he would tell you, like Alvin told me, he said, all I want you to do with this pitching staff we got in that big ballpark, if you hit me 20 home runs and drive in 75 runs, you'll have done your job. That's all I need from you is 20 home runs and 75 runs." Well, I wound up hitting 30 home runs, drove in 90-something. And we finished dead ass last. So, it didn't work out that well. But actually, the year before, when I hit 35 home runs to finish third in the league, if I'd hit the ball the same way in Cleveland playing in Fenway, it would have been 50 or 60 home runs.
Was Alvin Dark your favorite manager?
Oh, yeah. He was the best manager I ever played for winning was Dick Williams. Dick was a tough, sarcastic ex-Marine, you know, and he played Alvin had the best baseball mind. There were guys like Alvin Dark, Gene Mott, Paul Richards. Those were considered to be probably the three best baseball minds in the game, and at that time frame. But Dick Williams did things as the manager that were out of the box that none of those other guys would have done, even though they did things that were out of the box. But Dick played hunches, he played instincts, and he made moves in a ball game that, he was a hell of a winner. It's just that simple. Guys hated him. In fact, when we had our 40th anniversary of the 67 team, you know, they called me, they were going to have the 10th, and I didn't go. Then they called me when we were going to have our 20th, and I didn't go. They called me when we were having our 30th, I didn't go. And when they said, "Hawk, we're having our 40th anniversary," I said, "Hawk, you better get your ass up there." So I went up to Boston, and they had like 23 members of the team, 67 team that were there. And it was amazing, as you know, because the media was interviewing everybody, and it was amazing how many of those 23 guys said then, 40 years later, I hated Dick Williams. I couldn't stand him, but he was the best manager ever.
You get credited for inventing the batting glove. Did you ever think, you know what, I should have trademarked it?
Well, you know, necessity is the mother of invention. And, you know, how that came about was I was platooning. I was a young player at the time. And you got to remember, minimum salary was $6,000 back in those days. And my first 2 years in the big league, I made more money playing golf, shooting pool, and arm wrestling than I did playing Major League Baseball. So I was platooning, and the Yankees came in, and the only time we ever drew any fans at Kansas City was when the Yankees came in. So they had a right-hander scheduled to pitch that night, so Ted Bosefield and myself went out and played Sammy Esposito and Chino Samoli, $25 natural on the golf course. And of course, we killed them, but we played 27 holes because they wanted an emergency time. So I go to the ballpark that night, and I look at the lineup, and shit, I'm in there at third because the Yankees have switched from Jim Coates to Whitey Ford. And I developed, playing the 27 holes, developed a blister on my ring finger, the bottom of my ring finger on my left hand. And I remembered I had my golf club because I went right from the golf course to the ballpark. So I went up and I got the golf club, and it was a flaming red golf club. And I came to the plate at the bottom of the first inning, and I was wearing this golf club, and I'm telling the Yankees all over my ass, you know. You push, you know, all that stuff. Because nobody, you know, had ever worn one. So anyway, don't you know, Whitey hung me a curveball, and I hit that some bitch about 460 feet over that left center field wall. And every time I'd come to the plate, they were still on me, but not quite as bad. And then I hit another home run later on. So what happened was the next day, the Yankees all came out on the field wearing red golf gloves. Because Mantle had the clubhouse guy go out by a couple of dozen, and they all came out with red golf gloves on. So that's how the hitting glove got started, out of necessity.
How did you know when it was time to retire?
When I broke my leg and dislocated my ankle sliding into second base in spring training in '70. You know, in that rehab time, David, I just lost interest in playing the game. And, you know, 2 years earlier, I was Player of the Year and everything else. I had it figured out. I was 29 years old, and I just lost interest in playing the game. I did not want to play baseball anymore. And I told Gabe Paul, who was general manager, and I told Alvin, you know, Gabe was the president of the club. Alvin was the general manager. And Gabe was president of the club. And I told him, I said, I'm going to retire. I'm quitting. And Gabe Paul, I talked to him on the phone, and he said, you're not going to quit. He said, who's going to walk away from that kind of money? And I told him over the phone, I said, Gabe, you just made a big mistake. And I told him I was going to quit in Boston. The club was going to Boston on a road trip. And I wanted to have my last at bat at Fenway Park. So I announced it to the press that after that I was going to retire. And I'm a son of a gun. If we go up there, I'm going to pitch hit in the last game. Alvin, we had it all worked out. Don't you know we got rained out, so I never got to get my last at bat at Fenway Park. I just lost interest in playing the game. I wanted to try something different. I've always been a guy that wanted to, what's the right phrase, so that wanted a new challenge, you know, and I wanted to try golf. So, as I said, in June of 1971, I was playing baseball in the major leagues with the Cleveland Indians, and in June of 1972, I played in the British Open.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say you're the only baseball player who's made it to the British Open as a participant. How did you get started in golf?
Well, I got started really. We had a great American Legion team down in Savannah. In fact, a lot of scouts said it was one of the best, if not the best, Legion team they'd ever seen. So we won the state championship every year, and so we had a coach down there who was our Air Force Base is there in Savannah. And at that time, it was the largest sack base in the world. And we had a coach named Floyd Doss. He was major. And he had been a former baseball player. Didn't make it, so he went into the service. And he was our coach. After we won the state championship, he took a shortstop and somebody else and myself out. And I had never been on a golf course in my life, except a caddy. And he took us out to play around the golf. And we went out to a place called Mary Calder, which was a 9-hole golf course there in Savannah. And I'll never forget it. The first hole was the dog leg right. And we hadn't hit a practice ball. Nothing. We just went out and teed up. And I hit a driver, and I just absolutely just killed it. And I just somehow scraped an iron up there and knocked in about a 20-footer for a birdie. And it was the first hole of golf I ever played. And I wound up shooting, I think, 118 for that round. But my first hole in golf on Thursday night, that was, in fact, my junior year in high school, I didn't even play baseball. I sat out. I didn't even play baseball. I just wanted to try to play golf. And my school, Benedictine Military Academy, did not have a golf team. And after I played for 6 months, I started to shoot far, and so finally, I went to the Father Feed, who was president of the school, and I said, I'd like to go play at the regional golf tournament because they didn't have a golf team. So he said, okay, we'll start something up to go play. So I went to play in the city region and won it. And then I had to go to the States, which was up near Atlanta. And that's how the golf team got started at Benedictine. And since then, they've won several state titles. So that's how I really got started. But my junior year, some scouts told some other people that by me sitting out and not playing baseball my junior year, it cost me a ton of money when I did try it when I was a senior.
Did you want to go into broadcasting?
Did I what?
Did you want to go into broadcasting after you retired?
Did I want to?
Yes.
No, I didn't even think about it. I had a very bad temper, and that was the reason I didn't make it. I physically, like when I played the British Open, for the first 2 days, nobody hit the ball better than I did from tee to green. But the first day I shot 75, I had 6 3-putts, and I had 5 3-putts the second day, and I missed a cut by a shot. So that'll tell you how good that I was hitting the ball. In fact, I led All-American qualifiers when I went over to Quash. I shot 70-68 in terrible weather, and that was a low American qualifier. And it just got to the point that the golf became, I couldn't focus. I'd go out with 14 clubs, and I'd come back with 6 or 7. And you can't beat those guys with 6 or 7 clubs. They're too good. So
you had a temper on the course like Jimmy Demerit or Julio Sporos?
I'm having trouble understanding.
No.
You on a speakerphone?
No, I'm on a microphone. Let me go closer. So did you have a temper like
Yeah.
Julio Sporos or Jimmy Demerit?
Jimmy Demerit didn't have a bad temper. Tommy Bowles had a bad temper. I had a temper like Tommy Bowles, only it was worse. And Nicholas worked with me, and he was the one that taught me going into qualifying for the British Open because he was working with me and playing, and he asked me, that was year he was going for the Grand Slam. He won the Masters, and he won the US Open. And we were playing down at Lagos, and he said, you're going to go over and try to qualify for the Open? And I said, no. He said, Huck, you should. He said, you're playing too good. So he's the one that taught me into going over. But it got to the point that I had met at the time, now my wife, who in September we've been married for 41 years. And I fell deeply in love with her. And with my temper, she was coming out on the golf course with me. We got married in 73. So she would come out on the golf course with me, and she saw my temper. And then in 74, we were playing in a tournament in Savannah, a mini tour event. And there were 2-day events. So there were 4 of us that shot 68 the first day. There was myself, I think Fuzzy, Boots Lipsky, and either Bobby Watkins or Bill Rogers, one or the other. We all shot 68. So we were paired together the second day. And I shot myself out the first 9 holes. I 3-putted a couple of greens. So after the round was over, I took my golf clubs. My wife, who was not my wife at the time, she was, we just got married. And I took my golf clubs and I went over to this tree and I fired them up against this tree, broke every club in the bag. And I looked at her and she started crying. And I knew that if I didn't change, I was going to lose her. And I quit. I said I'm quitting. And we had a long talk. My wife and I had a long talk that night. We talked about 3 o'clock in the morning. But I had promised a couple of guys, we had a money game going the next day. And I had promised the guys, and of course I had other clubs, but that I would play in this money game the next day. And I told Harris, my wife, I said, honey, I'm going to play this round today, and that's going to be it. And she said, good. So I went out, the next morning I went over to the club to have some breakfast. I'm having breakfast before we practice and eat off. And the waitress comes over and she says, Hawk, there's a phone call for you. And I got up and went over and answered the phone. It was Mary Trank, who was Tom Yawkey, who owned the Red Sox, and Dick O'Connell was the general manager. It was their secretary. So Mary said, Hawk, Mary Trank said, Richard wants to talk to you. That was Dick O'Connell. So I said, hello. He goes, Hawk, we want you to come up here and audition for the color job in television. Now, just a few hours prior to this, we had made the decision that I was going to quit golf. And I didn't know what I would do. I knew it'd probably be something in baseball because I had a couple of offers to come back at DH because DH had just come into play in '73. So I'm talking with Dick, and they had like 700 applicants for the job. But when Dick calls and asked me to come up and audition for it, I mean, that was like saying, come on up, you got the job. Because, you know, he was the one that was going to make the decision. So I went up, I got the job, and that was, my first year was in '75, and Dick Stockton and I were partners, and that was my first year in broadcasting. But I had no idea. It was just ironic, though, that just hours, virtually hours after I had made the decision to quit golf, didn't know what I was going to do. I get a call, and that was, 39 years ago.
How did you end up with the White Sox? I can understand the Red Sox connection, but the White Sox doesn't seem to have a connection.
Well, Jerry and Eddie bought the club in 1980-81. And Harry and Jimmy were the announcers, and they wanted to make a change. They called Don Drysdale up, and then they called me up. And they said we wanted to put Drysdale and yourself together in the booth. They were going to let Harry and Jimmy go. And I had 3 years left on the contract with the Red Sox. So I called up the station manager, and I had lunch with him at Jimmy's Harborside restaurant there in Boston. And I told him, I said, this is what they've offered me. And I said, I've got 3 years I know left on this contract, and I'll honor that. He said, Hawk, I couldn't ask you to honor it. I can't meet that kind of money. So I signed a 5-year deal to come to Chicago, and which was my favorite city anyway. Again, I've been the luckiest son of a bitch that ever stepped 2 feet on the face of the earth in my life. This has been unbelievable.
Seems
So
like
that's how I got to Chicago.
everything you touch, it seems like turns to gold. I mean, you never had to worry. Everything just happened right when it happened. You never struggled, it seemed like.
Oh, yeah, there was a lot of internal struggle, a lot of internal battles. When you had a temper as bad as I did, my temper really was beneficial in baseball. Baseball, you can just, or hockey, you can have a bad temper. And I've always said, if there's such a thing as reincarnation, I want to come back as one of 3 things. So I either come back as Neil Diamond, a hockey player, or an eye drop salesman.
Why an eye drop salesman?
Well, I've had 2 operations on both eyes, detached retinas and cataracts. And they give you these little bottles of eye drops. It costs like $400 or $500 a bottle.
Whoa.
And they work, don't get me wrong, but I mean, these eye drop sales make a lot of money.
Was there pressure on you and Don Drysdale to basically be more conservative because of what the Sox went through with Harry and Jimmy?
No, we didn't change. There are a lot of guys that said it. A lot of guys, when I left to become general manager in '86, a lot of guys said that Drysdale and myself was the best team ever. So we had a great time, had a great acceptance, great following. And Don to me was the consummate announcer. I mean, if you're talking about professionalism, knowledge of the game, the whole 9 yards, Don to me was absolutely. I think one reason we hit it off here is because we used to argue on the air. We'd get in arguments. In fact, we almost got into a couple fights physically. I'm glad we didn't, because that big German, that son of a bitch, 6'6", he was.
I was going to say he was a pretty big guy.
Yeah. Well, one thing, but I said, baseball's a game where little guys know how to play with big guys.
Yeah. What did you learn from your one season as White Sox general manager?
That it's the worst fucking job in the world. It's 8 days a week, 25 hours a day. That's what it is. If you're going to get the job done, because when I got there, the club was they'd won in '83, winning ugly, and the club, though, if they didn't have anything in the farm system, that the club was really going bad. And simply put, somebody had to clean it up, and I did. In fact, the day I left, I told Jerry Nettie, I said, okay, you're on a level playing field now. I said, if you get somebody in here who's good in amateur drafts, in amateur scouting, I said, by 1990, this organization will be right where it should be. And I'm a son of a gun. From 1990 to 1998, for those 9 years, the only team that won more games than the White Sox was the Atlanta Braves.
You did something, though, as GM that I was happy you did. When you fired La Russa, I was so tired of him at that time. I just felt it was time for him to go. We needed fresh blood because it seemed like the team, like you said, there wasn't any talent there, and it seemed like they just quit on him.
Well, I'm not going to go into the whys and wherefores. The only thing I'm going to say about that situation is that Tony, I didn't fire him. I felt bad for Tony. Because every time, as you recall, every time he stuck his head out of the dugout, the fans were killing him. And, I mean, when Tony had balls, he wouldn't send the pitching coach out there or Dave Duncan. He'd just go out himself. And every time he walked out of the dugout, the fans would just, crucify him. So finally, after a game one night, I went into his office and sat down. And I looked at him. I said, Tony, I got to do one of two things. He said, what's that? I said, either going to fire you or I got to make you a hero. And he looked at me and he laughed. He said, well, you're not going to make me a hero. Well, as it turned out, obviously I did. So, no, I didn't fire Tony because he was a bad manager. But I always thought I had nothing but respect for Tony, okay? Because I knew him when he was 18 years old, and I knew him for a long time. And he was the first manager that I hired because when I came in, his contract was up. And I hired him. And, he managed for 34 years, which is absolutely phenomenal because he managed 34 years in the big leagues, only got fired one time, and I was the guy that fired him.
Is he going to thank you in his acceptance speech this year?
I don't know. We're going to have dinner together. We're going to have dinner together Friday night. So I'm going there. I've never been there for the induction, but I'm going to go there for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then come back Sunday night.
Do you have any Nehru jackets in a closet at home somewhere?
No, don't even fucking go there. Don't even go there. I bought one of every color. They had like 6 colors, and I bought one of every color, and the only one I got a chance to wear was the one on the cover of Sports Illustrated. And they went out of style. That's how quick they went out of style.
You almost killed the fashion industry single-handedly.
I'm telling you, Jesus Christ, that was. I finally wound up giving those to some. I was single this time. I finally wound up giving those to some young ladies who had them cut down, and asked me if they could have them for, a souvenir.
You could have gave him the Jack Brickhouse. He never turned down free clothes.
I don't think we would have. I don't think you guys were the same size.
Hey, yeah.
You've given out a lot of nicknames over the years. from the Big Hurt among zillions of others. Do you have a favorite nickname that you've created?
Yeah. There was one kid we had. My favorite was a little second baseman we had at Kansas City who I just loved. We all loved him. He was such a great guy. His name was John Donaldson. And I nicknamed him Scooby McDoobie. And that was my favorite all the time. Of course, Big Hurt's probably one of the most famous. I think they voted that third or fourth all-time nickname in baseball history. But back in those days, the culture was different. The culture of the game was different. Everybody had a nickname. That's something you couldn't say over the air in public. But it was very common. Like I gave Dick House his nickname Slick. And that's what everybody, that's his career. Everybody called him Slick. I mean, his friends and teammates and players who played for him. But we all had nicknames. It was, and it wasn't a nickname, it was a number. To this day, I still call Al Kaline 6. Every time I see him, I say, "How you doing, 6? Great to see you, buddy." That was the thing. You either had a nickname or you would get called by your number. That was just the way it was done back in those days.
Everybody's mentioning now that Ozzie should get back with the White Sox. Could you picture yourself and Ozzie calling games one time?
Let me say one thing about Ozzie. Ozzie and I had a falling out towards the end there. We had a period that we didn't speak to each other. But that doesn't mean I love Ozzie. I love his family. I will always love him. I saw him as a kid come up, and people forget in 2004, if we don't lose the Big Hurt and Mags, we probably win it then, too. That was his first year managing. And you can't lose those two guys because when they both went down, we were in first place. And then in 2005, he wins it all. And there was no question in my mind that there were two big reasons that we won the World Championship in 2005. The first one was Ozzie. No doubt about it. And the next one was A.J. Pierce-Benson. Those were the two reasons that we won the World Championship in 2005. And Ozzie, he just made a monumental. You just can't go down to Little Havana and say what he said. You can't do that. I was really afraid for Ozzie's life, to tell you the truth. I told my wife, I said, I hope they get him out of there, because it was not beyond my realm of thinking that somebody would have killed him. Too many families down there were hurt, by Castro. Mm-hmm. And you just can't say in the middle of managing the Miami Marlins that you respect Castro and you love him, blah, 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 blah. You can't do it. And he did it. And I'm sure he's sorry for it now. But Ozzie was a great, in 04 and 05, a great manager. There's no question about it. And personally, I hope he gets back into baseball. I think, people make mistakes. Everybody, you make them, I make them. And sometimes they're so severe that you can't overcome them. And this might be one of those signs. I hope it's not, because Ozzie loves the game, and he's a manager that, adds something to baseball that Billy Martin did. Earl Weaver. People don't pay to come out and see a manager manage. But in Billy Martin's case, a lot of people did. In Earl Weaver's case, a lot of people did. In Ozzie's case, a lot of people did. So I just feel bad, because I love his wife, Bess. I love the three boys, and they're a wonderful family. I mean, they're really a wonderful family.
Nowadays, with replay, you don't have the manager come out and argue as often. It sort of diminishes that theatrical component that Ozzie.
I thought the same thing. I thought the same thing, but as of about 3-4 weeks ago, ejections were markedly up from last year. but it was more so with players than managers. And I think the umpire, I love the instant replay. It's working. There's no question about that. I mean, it's working. They have to fine tune it and tweak it, because you can't have a crew of umpires in New York, in my opinion. You can't have a crew of umpires in New York taking out a rotation to go there for a week to monitor these reviews and replays. You have to have 4 impartial people doing this as a job, who don't care about the umpires, who don't care about, well, this guy, if we call him out, then this means that Jimmy Jones or Sammy Smith, the umpire, is going to miss 2 in a row here. It's going to make him look bad. So, because we have seen some replays that were, Bud Selig, of course, had, quote, quote, the best interest of baseball. Well, these umpires have, it's got to be conclusive.
What was your favorite moment in baseball?
Favorite moment? Oh, there's no question about it. Being introduced the opening day at the World Series. That's something you dream about as a child. And I dreamed about it. I was a different kid. I was a big kid. Very, very strong, abnormally strong. And I used to pay kids. I used to mow lawns and collect bottles so I could collect 10, 15 cents and maybe a half $1. And I would pay kids to come out and throw batting practice with me. And I could hit the ball tremendous distances when I was, 9 years old. In fact, the first Little League game I played, the first Little game in the history of Savannah. And in that game, I hit 3 home runs and a double. They were all over, over the fence and everything. So it was just one of those things that, again, when you bring back some memories that I haven't thought about in a long, long time. But I guess the best way to sum it up, I feel like it's got able to set 2 feet on the face of the earth.
I have interviewed 170 Hall of Famers, numerous athletes. We love hearing the stories. And we love hearing you broadcast because, again, you bring up the Carl Yastrzemskis, the Tony Coniglieros, the Whitey Fords. A lot of broadcasters don't do that, but I enjoy hearing the stories because baseball get boring just watching the pitcher throw the ball and the hitter hit it.
You'd be amazed at my mail on people writing the same thing. Now, I have to also, when I do it, I have to preface it now for all you youngsters out there who didn't know who Carl Yastrzemski was, and for all you youngsters out there who didn't know, Yastrzemski was a Triple Crown winner, Conigliero was the youngest home run leader, home run champion in American League history at 20 years old. I have to preface it by saying that, but the majority of my mail is from people who want to hear the stories, because baseball is built on great players. It's built on great rivalries and tradition. That's where tradition comes from, great players and rivalries. And that's why the scheduling, I went off on the schedule this year, and it just pisses me off. I mean, it's ridiculous what they're doing to the rivalries. They had us playing this year, the Cubs, on a Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, consecutively. Those are 2-3 game series that have to be spaced out like a month and a half apart. You've got to nurture those rivalries. The 3 greatest rivalries in baseball. First of all, number 1, without question, is the Dodgers and the Giants. That's number 1. Number 2 is probably the Yankees and the Red Sox, and number 3 is probably the White Sox and the Cubs. But you've got to take those into things. These aren't jewels, and that's what baseball is built on. And if you put them just regular games like on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday night consecutively, that's fucking bullshit. I mean, it's just bullshit. It's tearing down the fabric of the game of baseball. Now, the great players we got coming in are sensational. With your Mike Trouts, your Bryce Harpers, and these guys, and your Jose Abreu's and Cespedes and these guys. So the talent pool is there. But if they don't watch out, they're going to fuck up with the scheduling the way they're doing it, because they're tearing down the rivalries.
Well, I figured baseball made that schedule because they know those games would sell out, and why put them on the weekends when you could hopefully get another sellout? But I agree with you wholeheartedly. Those should be your showcase games. Those should be your weekend games, and they should be spaced out. it was as if baseball saying, "Okay, let's get these games out of the way and get on with the rest of the schedule." If you can figure out who makes that schedule and they can explain it, I'd be thrilled to listen to the explanation.
But I checked into that. Now they had a couple. I forget their name. They had a couple who lived up north who did it for years and years.
Right.
And that's the only thing they did. And when they did, they protected them. They put those rivalries on the weekends. They put them in good spots. Now, the new company, is out of Pittsburgh, I believe. It's called Scheduling Inc., Scheduling Group Inc., or something like that. After I went off on them, they called the White Sox and said, "What is he doing?" and I guess the White Sox told him he's doing what he thinks he should do. And they got pissed off. And what their response was, "Well, we got 30 teams to worry about, not 2. Well, that's bullshit. That is total bullshit. What it means, it's tradition, it's history, it's generational. It's from great-grandfather to grandfather, the father to son. And when you start tearing down those rivalries, you're taking away, as I said, from the very fabric of what made this game great. You don't have this kind of tradition in football or basketball. It's only in baseball. So, and now with soccer coming on like gangbusters, if they don't start making changes in that scheduling, whereas if we play the Cubs 3 games on the weekend, or Yankees play the Red Sox 3 games on the weekend, well, those things are precious, and the media has a ball with it. And if the media has a ball with it, that means the fans are going to be interested. Yeah. So it's just the thing. As I said, if they don't watch out, they're going to really screw this thing up.
Did you have a favorite game that you called as a broadcaster?
Oh, sure. Burley's perfect game.
Okay.
I'm an emotional guy. I cried when he threw his no-hitter, and I just cried. In fact, after he threw the perfect game, I'm driving home like I'm driving to the ballpark right now. I was driving home after the game. I had tears in my eyes because Mark Burley's still special. If it had been Jimmy Jones or Sammy Smith who threw that perfect game, I'd have gone in after the game and say, "Hey, great, buddy," and that would have been it. But when you get a special guy like Mark Burley or a Catfish Hunter, these are Robin Venturas. These are special people. Don Mattingly's, when these guys do well, your Derek Jeters, greatest baseball icon, of our, generation. Cal Ripkins. These are icons. And Burley, to me, when he threw that perfect game, with that shit he throws up there, I tell you what, I just got him, I started crying. That's my favorite game that I've ever called. I called Tony's, 500. I've had 13 no-hitters I've called. I've had some special moments in broadcasting. You're going to have, if you go 39 years, you're going to have some special moments.
You're right.
But none will ever top Burley's perfect game, because my favorite teammate was Catfish, and it's just absolutely unbelievable. These guys were the perfect bookends. One right-handed, one left-handed. You put your hands together. That's the way Mark Burley and Catfish Hunter were. They look alike. They have the same kind of physical structure. They had the same kind of mental posture. They both had dry wits. They both were great teammates. There was no bullshit with them. There was no alibis. They never put an alibi out in their life. Neither one of them had something. I mean, they hit you right in the eye with blankets. And yet, Catfish is at Cooperstown, and if Mark wants to keep going, he's got a chance to go to Cooperstown.
The only thing missing is you in Cooperstown.
Huh?
The only thing missing in Cooperstown is you.
People think it's patronizing or self-servicing. I don't think about it. I really don't. I think it's going to happen. Maybe probably when I'm dead, gone. But I'm going to just say just like another friend of mine. If they put me in when I'm dead, I'm not going. That's what Red Kerr said.
Okay.
He said, if they put me in the hall when I'm dead, I'm not going to go.
Well, in that case, I'll have to put you in while you're still broadcasting, because I assume you're going to broadcast until you're no longer breathing.
Well, let me tell you something. I got no choice. I got no say in the matter. When you marry a Greek, I haven't seen a paycheck in 41 years. And I told her a couple of years ago, I said, honey, I'm thinking about retiring. And I was just probing a little bit, you know. She goes, no, you're not. But our whole family, you know, we're probably as close as any family you ever want to see. And we grew up in a way where we all have our own space. You know, I was gone most of the time when she was raising Krista and Casey, and she did a wonderful job. And now they, as adults, they both have children, and they like their own space. So, I mean, it's, you know, but I love what I do. And I literally, you know, I've said it before, I would love to die in the booth. That would be the perfect ending for me, is to be calling a game, you know, and then go at the plate. So Matthew on the mound, here's the pitch. I know you know, way back. Slip, you can't put it on the ball. Just go.
The only problem with that is Steve Stone might try to give you mouth to mouth.
But that would be my perfect exit. You know, you got to have an entree and you got to have an exit, and that would be my exit if I could write the script.
Well, hopefully that won't be for a very long time.
Well, you know, I'm 72 now. I feel great. I love the club we have. I just salivate when I think about Garcia, FCL. In fact, I was thinking about it before y'all called. You know, next year, you know, with Abreu and Tank, one of the big benefits that I think Garcia is going to have coming back off missing this year, it's going to be easier for him to break in because of Abreu and Viciado, because Tank is coming on up. But just to think about, you know, that lineup, we're going to have good speed at the top. Micah Johnson's got a chance to be, you know, a game changer. And you get that speed up there. Rick Hahn's done just a fabulous. The way we lost 99 games last year, it's not losing 99, it's the fucking way we lost them. That's the worst season I have ever endured my entire career as an announcer and as a player. I hated going to the ballpark last year. This year, I can't wait to get there. And it's going to be this way. We're not going to win this thing this year because they're full, but we got some good arms down there, but we don't have, you know, bullpen by committee. Anytime you ever hear that, you know they're in trouble.
Yeah.
And that's where we are now, bullpen by committee. When Lindstrom comes back and Nate Jones comes back, then it's going to be a little bit different story. But by then it might be too late. But I'll tell you, 15, 16, 15, 18, 19, 20, there's going to be a hell of a ball club.
Thank you so much for your time.
I have one final question. Do you wish you could curse on the air?
Yeah. I really do. You know, like that play when Gillespie got caught off first base on the foul ball down the left field line. I would love to be able to say, how the fuck can he do that? I would love to be able to say that, but you can't. You know, I got ripped for, you know, you got to be so PC today. And for me, political correctness should be thrown in the trash can. I mean, it really should be. That's where it's gone way too far. When I mentioned in the Boston series, when Tanaka came out, when Tozawa came out, I was mentioning how all Oriental pitchers, you know, have a funny wind-up. Well, you can't believe the blowback that came from me saying Oriental. Let me ask you a question. What is Tozawa?
You're right.
What is he?
He's Oriental, but again, they've taken it to the extreme.
Exactly. You know what? So the Boston got emails and phone calls saying, I'm offended that Hawks called Tozawa an Oriental. And then I read in fact, background, and Brooks Boyer showed me an email yesterday that this guy, he was an Oriental. His name was Kang. He wrote this beautiful letter. He might be a professor or something, and explaining why that people get upset now. It's an outdated, what he said is an outdated term. It's not like me calling Tom Candiotti or Jim Pagosi a Dago on the air, or, you know.
Right.
That's demeaning.
It goes down to intent.
Calling,
it comes to intent. Whether you say black, Chinese, or something, if your intent's not to harm, there should be nothing wrong with it.
Well, and when
exactly.
Hawk and I were young, there were Oriental restaurants.
Sure. Now they want to be called Asian restaurants, Asian pitchers. They don't want to be called Orientals. And, you know, I read a piece on a survey about African Americans that they had rather be called, the majority, not all, but the majority had rather be called Negroes than African Americans. So it's, you know, anything you say today with the internet and the social media the way it is, you're going to have one guy out there that gets pissed off, and it's going to get all over the place. That's why that I get a lot of hot water a lot of times with things that I say media-wise. I've said stuff, you know, that I don't even know what. Going viral means it goes all over the world. Is that what they mean when something goes viral? Okay. I've had that done like 8 or 9 times where stuff I've said has gone, you know, viral. And I'm not a tweeter. I don't have Facebook or any of that stuff. I do email, but no, you're going to be the daily broadcaster. Just tougher on these new broadcasters, and that's one reason I think that a lot of people love to hear a lot of the stories that I tell is because the new broadcasters coming in, they've got a tough road to hoe. You know, when Harry left, he was the last of the breed. When I leave, I'll probably be the last of the breed. And these new guys coming in, you're going to see a lot of, you know, good ones, but you're also going to see a lot of cookie cutters.
Part of the problem is you get guys like Boris and Bernstein here talking about stats, war, all that stuff, and they start ripping broadcasters for telling the stories and doing that type of thing.
Well, Boris and Bernstein are 2 fucking idiots. You know, I call them trash dealers. They deal in trash. That's how they make their money. You know, they can take any positive situation. And I told Bernstein when he first started as a announcer there at the school, I was going to the golf course one morning, way back when. He's been there a long time now. And I listened to him a couple of times, and I called him up, driving to the golf course. I said, Dan, it's Ken Harrelson. And he said, oh, how are you? I said, I just got to tell you, buddy, you got a chance to be a hell of an announcer. But you got to stay right where you're at. You know, you can't veer off, you know, the Howard Sterns and all that stuff side. Well, that's what he's done. You know, he's got a terrific mind. Boris is just a fucking idiot. He knows nothing about, you know, I don't know what they know about football and basketball, but I know one thing. They don't know anything about baseball. I don't listen to them anymore. I used to listen to them. I don't listen to talk radio anymore. I don't read newspapers. And so what I do is I put my satellite TV, radio on, and I'll listen to Fox News. I'll listen to, you know, whoever. I listen to my Neil Diamond, my music when I'm driving because I got 3 hours drive time every day. And the last thing I'll do is listen to a program like Boris and Bernstein. I call them Boris and Bernstein. You know, they're negative. They're negative about everything.